There were two reasons for recording my transition. Initially, it was something I wanted to do, A, as a video diary, so I could look back and see my progress.
As the first transgender racing driver, what motivates you and how important is that LGBT plus representation in your sport?
I think LGBTQ plus representation is really important in motorsports and in the automotive world as a whole as well. I think if we look through history, I mean, there was Roberta Cowell, who transitioned in 1948, who competed at quite a high level as a racing driver and was also a fighter pilot. I mean, an incredible pioneer for her time. But in all that time since then and now, there are a couple of people that pop up from the LGBTQ community throughout history, but very few and far between. And I think, therefore, I mean, I never saw anyone like me in a career that I was interested in. You know, I wanted to be a fighter pilot actually when I was very young, but whether it's fighter pilot, racing driver, when you can't see anyone that looks like you just feel like, how am I ever going to make it? And let's be honest, motorsport is an incredibly tough sport to make it as a driver. It's not like football or tennis or something where you just pick up a ball or a racket and you start playing. You need hundreds of thousands of pounds to make it to Formula One, it's millions and millions, you know. So you need to feel like you have an actual realistic chance of succeeding in your career. And if you can't see the people that are doing it already, it's so easy to lose heart. And that's why, to me, it feels so critical to be out there, to be visible, so people can see, yeah, you know, this is possible, and believe in possibility.
You did record your transition on YouTube. So why did you decide to do this, and what response did you receive on social media?
There were two reasons for recording my transition. Initially, it was something I wanted to do, A, as a video diary, so I could look back and see my progress. Because when you're transitioning, sometimes you don't feel like you're moving forwards. And actually, it's only when you see a video from 3, 4, 5 months ago, you realize that you have. And that's an important feeling, I think, to reassure yourself. And it helps a lot, I think, dealing with that process and setbacks, which are inevitable. But also, it was a real opportunity for me to do good and to give back, because YouTube was actually the catalyst that empowered me to transition, because it was the first time, having never seen anybody relatable growing up in mainstream culture who was transgender. It was the first time I saw people who were relatable and whose story resonated with me, and therefore that inspired me to feel like transition was a realistic thing I could achieve. And I wanted to give something back. I wanted to contribute to that and feel like my story could help other people reach their own starting point on their journey and experience the happiness that I'd found.
What were some of your main fears leading up to your transition, and how did you overcome them?
My main fears coming into transition, I think, were primarily the effect that would have on all the relationships in my life. So my friends, my family, my work, my career, all those areas where I had no idea of knowing how, you know, how they'd be affected, basically. And I overcame that, I suppose, by a combination of thinking, you know, trying to think things through, trying to move at a pace that allowed other people to be part of that journey with me. Because when you transition, everyone in your life has to transition with you. And although these were things that I'd known about myself for 25 years or more, to a lot of people, it was an entirely new thing. And I think people therefore have their own fears. And so it was a case of trying to look at things objectively, see things from their perspective, and try to carry people along and educate them and turn them into allies as I went through that process.
So obviously you are a key role model in the LGBTQ plus community. So why is it important that we continue to raise awareness and support that community?
Well, having just finished, oh, sorry, I start again. Having just got through LGBT History Month, it's an ideal point to ask that question: why do we need to continue supporting the community? Well, I think the fact is that when you look back at LGBTQ plus history, you understand that there's been so much struggle and sacrifice, so many brave and courageous people who through their own hard work have got us to the point of progress that we're at today. And I feel very lucky to be living at this period in time where I have so much civil liberty in my life to live freely as my true authentic self. But the reality is that we still have a long way to go. In the UK, we're relatively lucky in terms of safety and everything else and where we've become as a society. But even so, there's still a huge amount of pushback against the transgender community. And you've only got to look as farther outside into Europe and around the world, and LGBTQ plus people suffer discrimination, violence, murder, job insecurity, all kinds of things. There's a huge amount of progress that still needs to be made. And even now there are countries that are rolling back on progress that has been made previously. In Eastern Europe, for example, there's a lot of push from the far right to move back on gay same-sex marriage and things like this. And so I think we are at a point in history where we still need to continue supporting the community. We need to push for progress, and we need to each play a part in that wherever we can.